putting him in therapy at 13 because what he needed help with, my wife and I were not equipped to help him navigate because we were not healed ourselves. If you helicopter parent because you grew up in a toxic environment of abuse and it was very bad, when you bring a child into this world and you give them that safety, your child knows nothing about your experience. So if you're overly protective, they don't know why you're overly protective. If you get triggered over certain things and certain people, you won't leave them out your sight. They would not know, what am I doing wrong? Like, why don't my parents trust me? A lot of things that I've noticed with helicopter parents, and I am guilty of this as well, is that your child tend to grow up always feeling some sort of guilt. Like, I can never do enough to get you to trust me because you're going to be over me and hovering over my friendships, and I can't go anywhere by myself because you don't trust me. The kid doesn't understand that it's not you they don't trust, it's the world. It's the world that has hurt you, parent, right? Whether you were abused and your innocence was taken from you, you don't trust the world. And the thing that is most precious to you, your child, you don't trust the world with your child. It's a crazy dynamic because the child don't know why. Even if you do share with them as they get older, it's still hard for them to grasp. I'm sorry that happened to you, mom, dad. But what does that have to do with me? Think about your child's life through their perspective. Think about the environment that you put them in, the house that you put them in, the schools that you put them in, the safety nets that you put around them. The reason we helicopter parent or have helicopter parent is not because we don't trust our children. We don't trust the world. We've been hurt by the world. We've been hurt by people closest to us. Relatives, friends, family, classmates, bullies, students. So because we do not trust the world, it's hard for us to release them in the world that we don't trust. Our children internalize that as you don't trust me. These are conversations that you must have with your children and help them to understand. And I think dialogue and conversation with your kids can help you, parents, compromise. Full transparency, we did not let our children sleep over anywhere. And as our children got older, we're a little bit more comfortable with that. But that's just one of the things that I have never been able to get over and that I just can't do. But there are other things that we let our children know why. We let our children know it has nothing to do with them. And we don't try to instill fear in our kids, but we want them to be aware. And one of the things that I had to do with my children growing up in the neighborhoods I grew up in, I had to be careful that I did not project my fear onto my children. Where I grew up, I mean, I'm looking at the cars that are parked. Like, I'm looking to make sure there's no one in a parked car. Like, and this is just like street smarts growing up where I grew up. Things that I look out for, the average person don't look out for. And I remember one day going to my kid to try to like put him onto game and be like, hey, you know, when you walk in the dog and you see these parked cars on the side of the road, look into it and make sure no one's sitting in there. And why I say I had to be careful, because I realized I was putting him onto game, but in the manner I was doing it, I was also projecting fear into him. And I had to take a step back and change my approach. So I would go with him and walk the dog with him, and I would give him stories and be like, hey, you know, like whenever you walking, just be aware. Don't put your head in your phone, put your phone in your pocket, and just be aware of your surroundings. Maybe a car could lose control and you just want to know, like, you could keep yourself safe. And speak to them in a way that will not make them fearful people, individuals, but will also make them aware individuals, being present. Another thing with helicopter parenting is always try to see yourself through the child's perspective. For example, my wife and I said that we would not argue in front of the kids. Let's go back to therapy sessions. I've learned in therapy that was a big mistake. Because arguing for me was so toxic, it often got violent growing up. So arguing in for me was something that was not was like no, like I said, it got violent. But your children needs to see you and your wife having healthy arguments, healthy disagreements, and how you guys navigate disagreements and arguing. They need to see that. As long as it's healthy and as long as it does not make the child feel insecure about your relationship. Now, I'm not saying you guys are arguing and fighting about getting divorced. And no, I'm talking about, honey, why didn't you do the dishes? Baby, blah, blah, blah. Like just everyday arguments and disagreements. My wife and I did a lot of surface level parenting where we will have disagreements, but it was never real arguments. And all our real arguments was saved for inside the bedroom. Now, if your kids are small, right, if they're like toddlers, I don't personally, I don't think it's good to argue in front of toddlers. You want them to have that security. I'm talking about as they get a little bit older, let them see a positive dialogue between you and your wife, positive and negative. One of the mistakes that we've made, right? We've sheltered them from the extremities of affection and arguments. And what we gave them was what we thought was balanced and surface level and calm and cool, the complete opposite of the house that I grew up in. And in therapy, I'm learning you are doing that because of what you saw. Your children did not see that. Your children did not grow up in abuse. My children did not grow up in violence. My children grew up in a nice household. So their experiences is completely different. And I'm saying all this to say, don't project your life lived experiences onto your children because you're trying to protect them. You have to get healed for yourself from those experiences so you can parent the children in the right way. And again, don't be afraid to have healthy disagreements with your spouse or significant other in front of your kids. Show them how you have conflict resolution. Show them healthy arguments, but make sure they are seeing the affection in the house. My wife and I, full transparency, we're very affectionate, but in front of the kids, it's surface level. We'll kiss each other, we'll hug each other. But something that we said that we'll do more of was to show them more of affection. And that's the balance. You see, the balance isn't shielding them from the argument or the affection. The balance is showing them the argument and the affection, how you resolve the argument and how you're affectionate with each other, and let them live in that balance. They are going to go out in life and they're going to have to navigate disagreements and arguments. They're going to have to navigate when to be affectionate with their own spouses. And what they learn in the household, it comes from you. Their identity, as they grow up, it forms within the household, it forms within the schools and the environments that they live. But we should be their biggest influences. And I'm telling you all this because I'm learning this in my therapy sessions as I'm getting healed, as my wife is getting healed, as we're overcoming and facing these things in which we grew up in. We can now parent our children in a more positive and balanced ways. And that even includes the overprotecting aspect of it. The overprotecting aspect is thinking that we are going to control the narrative because I will be damned if my kids see what I saw. I will be danged if my kids grew up the way I grew up. So we do everything to protect them from that. And like I said, get healed, parents, from your own experiences first, so that you can parent balance and not project your past onto your children in a complete opposite fashion from which you grew up, because that could be unhealthy. You could have grew up wild. check out what I'm about to tell you. You could have grew up wild and rebelled because of your painful childhood and went out there and smoked and drank and did everything. Put your kids in a household that they're not going to see abuse. They're not going to grow up the way I grew up. And you're doing everything to protect them and shield them from that and putting them in the right environment. Because they were so sheltered, They couldn't wait to grow up and get out of that shelter to go out and do the same things you did. Smoking, drinking, vaping, all that stuff. And they're rebelling in the same way. And you're like, I don't get it. I gave them the exact opposite of what I had. I rebelled because I was hurting and because of the pain and the violence. They're rebelling because they felt like you never trust them. And everything they did wasn't good enough. I'm telling you, usually when you talk to people that helicopter parent, a lot of them have unhealed hurts and unhealed trauma. And it's projected on the child unfairly because of their unhealed hurts and unhealed trauma. Speaking about myself, we just try to protect. We try to love on our kids and give them something that we've never had. And we end up hurting them. We had to put one of our son in therapy at a very young age. And that's not a bad thing. That's a great thing. I think all parents should put their kids in therapy. There are things that your child processes that they might feel more comfortable processing with a counselor. Or there may be things about your child that they need counseling for to help them navigate that maybe we're not equipped to. And that was the best thing I did for my child, putting him in therapy at 13, because what he needed help with, my wife and I were not equipped to help him navigate. Here's why. Because we were not healed ourselves, because we grew up in households that didn't teach us or show us these things. That was never modeled to us. So how can we teach that which we don't know? That's why I'm saying, like, the therapy was great for my kid at 13, and it helped him get over things that we didn't know where they were coming from. Another thing we did, once we realized when we helicopter parented at the times we did, we went to our kids and apologized, explained what we did to them, why we did what we did, and started having dialogue and conversation of how we can do better. My therapist told me this the first time I unpacked some stuff with her and realized the mistakes I made as a dad. And I said, I'm going to have to apologize to the kids. And she said, I'll tell you something. I've been a therapist for I forget how many years. Children are the most forgiving, especially when parents make mistakes that they didn't realize, like in their parenting methods. I'm just talking about parenting style and methods, and you realize it was wrong and it actually hurt them more than it helped them. My therapist told me, children are the most forgiving people out there. All they want to see is an apology and an effort. And she was so right. My kids were like, come on, Dad. And I was like, no, like, this is what it was. This is what it is. And Mom and I just want to say we're sorry and we're going to do better. And they were like, okay, yeah. And they processed it. They realized it, that we were right? And they moved on. So if you are a child watching this and you feel safe and comfortable to send this to your parents, by all means. And parents, if you're watching this and it resonates with you and you're like, yeah, I helicopter parent the heck out of my kid because my uncle or my aunt treated me bad or abused me or whatever. So I don't make no apologies for the way I parent because I'm protecting my kid. That's fine. You can double down and you can keep that stance. That's your decision. The perspective I would like to offer, if I may offer a different perspective, is think about it through your child's eyes. Think about it through their eyes. They were not abused. They did not see the violence. They probably did not see the poverty. They did not see the stress. All they saw was your love. And all they see is how strict you are. And they don't know why. They don't know everything they do, they try, and it's never good enough, and why you don't trust them to go to the store, trust them to do this or that. They understand your experience was hard, but they're probably still internalizing it. But like, I'm me, I'm different. And as they get older, it gets worse. As they get older, that internalization gets worse and worse. So if your kids are still young, I'm saying you still have a great chance to try to trust them in little things. And here's where I'll navigate to the next part of this episode. Well, I realize that I have been doing it. and I want to stop, but it's hard for me to trust. What are some of the things that I can do? The first thing I would offer, if you have not gotten healed, confronted, or went to therapy or spoken to a counselor or someone about the things in your childhood or your past that makes it difficult for you to trust, the first step is seek counsel. That's the first advice I'll give out. The second advice, start with little things. Start trusting your kids with little things. Find little things that you normally are afraid of that you feel comfortable and safe enough to let them do. I don't know what it is. I'll just say, let's say if it's walking the dog, and I'm just giving examples. You have to do it to your own life, and you know what those are, right? Start doing little things to show them that you trust them. Start speaking it into them. Even if you have to say, baby, you know, I trust you, right? I had some things in my past that caused me to do this, and I'm going to get some help. I'm going to speak to someone, but I'm going to start trusting you. Here's what I'm going to do: X, Y, Z. I'm going to do these little things and just start building that. As you get healed, and the more you get healed through your own journey of speaking to someone, the easier it will be to kind of let go and trust them. And I'm speaking to the choir. I'll tell you straight off rip, like my daughter, I still would not let her sleep over anywhere. Now, it may be grandma's house. And here, this is another thing. Maybe there is little things you can trust. Like maybe you have a sister that you trust. And you could say, okay, well, you can sleep over at such and such. You start with little things, right? But for me, like I'm still working on things that my daughter will know that we trust her and we love her. And we will have to get over certain things. But I never want my children to ever feel like I do not trust them. I don't want them to ever feel insecure about who they are. I don't want them to ever feel like they have to live in a constant state of guilt or never good enough. I'm not coming to you from the perspective of a doctor, giving you all the advice on how to stop helicopter parenting. I'm coming to you as a former helicopter parent that is in therapy and getting healed and still fixing those issues in some ways, because there are some things that I probably won't bend on. And like I said, I'm not comfortable letting my daughter sleep over at anybody's house. That's just one thing I'm just not there. I just can't. But there are things that I do now that helps build her confidence. And I would not have probably done it in the past, right? Where she knows right now 100% has nothing to do with her and has everything to do with me protecting her from a world out there that is crazy dangerous. But also, there's a world out there that's crazy beautiful. To manage that balance of the beauty of life, the beauty of people, and to explore the world without being gullible and taken advantage of, and without projecting fear into them, and without projecting panic and worry into them, but to have them still be aware and to still be cautious. That's a hard thing to navigate. And kudos to all the parents out there. I'm telling you, this thing does not come with a handbook. Anybody could come in the comments and say what they want. They could criticize me, judge me, whatever. I'm telling you, there's no perfect parent. As long as you have love and that you want to try to do the best that you can, I think that's a good starting point. I would say that's a great starting point. Because when you hear information like this from this show for the first time, and it makes you think and makes you think of ways to, like, how can I show my kid that I trust them? Let me take them out. Let me ask them, hey, what would you like to do that mom and dad were strict on? And, go down the list. Some of it you could have a hard no on, Mia sleeping over. Some of it you could be like, yeah, we can do that. You know what? I'll drop you by so-and-so house and I'll pick you up at 7. By the way, when you're over there, who's in the house? Let me talk to the mom. Okay, is the dad home? And there's nothing wrong with looking out for your kid. There's nothing wrong with being a protective parent. Just make sure that we are not projecting onto our children our experiences that we have shielded them from. Let them know they are worthy. Let them know you trust them. Let them know they are loved. And tell them your story. Once they're old enough, tell them your story. Share with your kids the things about your story and your past without shame and without fear. So I hope this episode and unpacking my last therapy session helped you. I would love for your comments and advice. Go ahead and drop it in. Again, this is the Paul Larry Podcast. I'm sharing what I learned in therapy with you in hope that you can give me some feedback and let me know how you manage it, how you handle being a protective parent without being overprotective. Thank you for watching. Remember to subscribe, hit that bell notification for more episodes. Be blessed.